Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So this evening we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Chapter 2, Text 62. Dhyāyato viṣayān puṁsaḥ saṅgas teṣūpajāyate saṅgāt sañjāyate kāmaḥ kāmāt krodho bhijāyate dhyāyato viṣayān puṁsaḥ saṅgas teṣūpajāyate saṅgāt sañjāyate kāmaḥ kāmāt krodho bhijāyate dhyāyato viṣayān puṁsaḥ saṅgas teṣūpajāyate saṅgāt sañjāyate kāmaḥ kāmāt krodho bhijāyate kāmāt krodho bhijāyate dhyāyataḥ. While contemplating viṣayān, sense objects, puṁsaḥ, of a person, saṅgāh, attachment, teṣu, in the sense objects, upajāyate, develops, saṅgāt, from attachment, sañjāyate, develops, kāmaḥ, desire, kāmāt, from desire, krodha, anger, abhijāyate, becomes manifest. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. While contemplating the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment for them, and from such attachment lust develops, and from lust anger arises. Purport. One who is not Krishna conscious is subjected to material desires while contemplating the objects of the senses. The senses require real engagements, and if they are not engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, they will certainly seek engagement in the service of materialism. In the material world, everyone, including Lord Śiva and Lord Brahmā, to say nothing of other demigods in the heavenly planets, is subjected to the influence of sense objects, and the only method to get out of this puzzle of material existence is to become Krishna conscious. Lord Śiva was deep in meditation, but when Parvati agitated him for sense pleasure, he agreed to the proposal, and as a result, Kartikeya was born. When Haridāsa Ṭhākura was a young devotee of the Lord, he was similarly allured by the incarnation of Māyā-devī. But Haridāsa easily passed the test because of his unalloyed devotion to Lord Kṛṣṇa. As illustrated in the above-mentioned verse of Śrī Yāmunācārya, a sincere devotee of the Lord shuns all material sense enjoyment due to his higher taste for spiritual enjoyment in the association of the Lord. That is the secret of success. One who is not, therefore, in Krishna consciousness, however powerful he may be in controlling the senses by artificial repression, is sure ultimately to fail, for the slightest thought of sense pleasure will agitate him to gratify his desires. Translation, please repeat. While contemplating the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment for them, and from such attachment lust develops, and from lust anger arises. Om Agnatimirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Paran Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gorange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusure Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, everyone. Thank you for being here this evening for our Bhagavad Gita class. I beg a little bit apology. I'll try my best in presenting this class, but I'm struggling a little bit because of the heat. I'm having a little bit problems because it's like 42, 43 degrees outside. But anyhow, so for this evening's class, I first of all took help from Burijan Prabhu's book, Surrender Unto Me, and I will try to give a little overview first before we come to the topic of today's sloka. So we're still discussing the second chapter, which is entitled Contents of the Gita Summarized, or Atman Atma Viveka Yoga, distinguishing the soul from the body. We know, we've said before, that the second chapter gets divided into 5 topics. The first topic, Arjuna further expresses his doubts. The second topic, Krishna gives the argument of jnana, distinguishing the body from soul. For that reason he should fight. And then in the third topic he speaks about karma, that if you just perform your duty as a kshatriya, you gain the heavenly planets. And then buddhi, from the point of fixed Krishna consciousness with intelligence. And now, starting from verse 54 till the end of this chapter, we are now covering the 5th topic of the second chapter, which is entitled Sthita Prajñā, or become fixed in Krishna consciousness. Sthita Prajñā, Srila Prabhupada explains, means one who is in full control of his senses. Of course, as Prabhupada explains, we can't control our senses unless we know how to control our mind, because our mind is a subtle material element that controls, is in charge of our senses. We know from the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam that the mind is actually situated in the mode of goodness. So if we organize our life, and as best as we can, living in sattva guna, then the mind automatically will be very pacified and peaceful. To control the mind, sometimes, it's a huge topic, but I'll just briefly brush over it. We sometimes give this formula of MSG. The mind needs a master. In other words, we don't need to listen to the dictates of the mind, but we need to be the master of our mind. Just like an unruly child needs somebody to catch hold of them and control them. And so the mind needs a master. And as stands for schedule. The mind needs a schedule. If we have a daily schedule, then that doesn't leave room for contemplation, of speculation. We have a daily routine, sadhana routine that we're following. We know what we're eating, at what time, what we're doing, where we're going. Then the mind is subdued in that way. And the mind needs a goal. We need to have a goal in our life, in our spiritual life. If we have a goal, something to focus on, then that also gives the mind an activity to be positively engaged towards too. Now, if we don't control our mind, and actually we have a duty to ourselves and to each other to make a sincere effort in controlling our mind and our senses, because we need each other's association, we need our own association. If we don't take charge of our senses and our mind, then we're not really doing ourselves a favor, and we're not giving good association to others. And the result of not controlling the mind and the senses is given in this particular sloka in text 62. Namely, the result is that you will think of objects of sense enjoyment. You will contemplate. Something comes, you notice maybe an advertisement or a conversation or a sight. This is actually what happened to Ajamil. He was from a very nice Brahmin family. He just happened to walk and see a low-class woman embracing a man. And he saw that sight. So his senses, his eyesight became attracted. And he was contemplating, what are they doing? Oh, that looks enjoyable. It looks like something. I want that too. And then he went down that whole path. So we will think of objects, we will develop attachment for them. This is saṅgā, the word for word means saṅgāt. This attachment develops, and then of course from that attachment, because you see the mind is contemplating, yes, you saw this object and it promises enjoyment. And that's what you want. That's the purpose of life, is to somehow or other enjoy the senses in so many ways. Actually, that's why we were forced into this particular body. I'm not this body, but this body I'm forced to inhabit because of my material desires. I was thinking that this particular body will be optimum for me, for my sense enjoyment. I will be able to enjoy my senses in so many ways. So we're developing an attachment to a particular idea. We develop a strong desire because there's this tantalizing promise of enjoyment. Because inherently, as conditioned souls, we're here in this material world because we want to enjoy. We want to enjoy through the senses, through this body. And then if we don't get it our way, we've developed a strong attachment to a particular idea or situation. And if we don't get it our way, then Krishna is saying anger comes, we get frustrated, we get upset. So Prabhupada and Krishna of course is encouraging that therefore we must fix our mind on Krishna, because the whole problem comes with a misconception that this material world is for our enjoyment. But we know that everything is meant to be utilized for Krishna's pleasure, because inherently we are his eternal servant. So Arjuna, before he had asked these questions about what is this Dhita Prajna, how does he walk? He asked Krishna. And the meaning is given, actually what he means by how does he walk, how does a man on the transcendental platform walk? Which means, how does a man in transcendence engage his senses? In the nectar of instruction, I mean, it's a big topic, but and you've heard many things about it. And I'll just give a little reminder here. The second verse of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Savo Padi Viniyamuktam Tat Paratvena Niyamalam Rishi Kena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhakti Ujjate. Bhakti, or devotional service, means engaging all our senses in the service of the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Master of all the senses. When the spirit soul renders service unto the Supreme, there are two side effects. One is freed from all material designations, upadhis. We don't identify ourselves as this material body. We understand what our real designation is. And simply by being employed in the service of the Lord, one's senses are purified. This is really important. I find this verse very encouraging, especially the part where it says, Rishikena Rishikesha. Rishikesha is the name of Krishna, he who controls the senses. Because even the impersonalists, or even Mayavadis or yogis, they also have this understanding that we need to control our mind and our senses to achieve a particular, spiritual purpose, or even material purpose. Some kind of control must be there. But actually, we all have experienced it, I'm sure, that we can try really hard on our own strength to control our mind and senses in so many ways, but inevitably, in some way or another, we tend to fail, we fall short. So here we are encouraged to understand that actually the Lord is Rishikesha, or the master of our senses. We mark our body when we do our tilak, Om Rishikeshaya Namaha. So we are asking the Lord, please, I can't control anything, but you're the supreme controller. Please, you take charge of my senses. And that's one of the main reasons why we take shelter of the Lord, because actually we need his help, like that. So sthita prajna, one who is transcendentally situated, or one who is in divine consciousness. He has no material affection. The attachment comes because we are giving our heart, we're giving our emotion to a situation or to persons in the material sphere. And because we're having this expectation of reciprocation. And from that, attachment develops. So somebody who's on the transcendental platform, he knows that it will not work out. He knows that actually I have to give my heart, I have to give my affection to Krishna, who is the root cause of everything, and then I will be in that transcendental platform, I will have a loving, affectionate relationship with Lord and his creation, with other living beings in a spiritual way. Arjuna also asked Krishna, what is his position of somebody who is in transcendence? What are his symptoms? And Krishna answers, he is detached from both happiness and misery. That means material happiness and misery. It doesn't mean that he's not aware or that it doesn't happen to him, but he doesn't allow his spiritual consciousness to be deviated by material happiness or distress. I wanted to give a little example. I don't know if you can remember, maybe about 4 years ago roughly, it was Good Friday. I know here in Vrindavan we are not so much aware of Easter time, but in the West they celebrate, Christian communities, they celebrate Easter. Of course it's a very important festival, and there's Good Friday. And I remember in the afternoon suddenly this loud rumbling noise was coming through the sky, like a huge train is coming or something, and these dark clouds were moving across, and all of a sudden it was just hailing like anything. These huge, like tennis ball size hailstones were coming from the sky. I've never experienced anything like it. Actually, when we were living on our little farm in Australia, in the countryside, sometimes there would be hailstorms too, and the farmers would get so upset, of course, because the hailstones would shred the trees and the flowers, and all their harvest, would be destroyed. So we were watching this massive hailstorm, and within minutes, Vrindavan was transformed. We were looking outside, and you could think like you suddenly landed in the Himalayas. It looked like ice everywhere and white and like that. And it moved by. It was thunderous noise, and it hit even people on their heads, and injured and damaged cars and smashed windows and so many things. It was quite a big event. But why am I telling you this is because the next day what astonished me was people just carried on with their life as if nothing had happened. I was amazed because when we had a hailstorm like that in Australia, everybody would be talking about it, people would rally, and it would be on the news for days together, and it would be like a major event. But this was a far greater hailstorm than I'd ever experienced. But people kind of just like, okay, this is what happened. You have to be tolerant, and you just carry on with life, You just move on, like as it was no big issue. Like the tolerance level just amazed me, like that, how people tolerate it. So somehow or other, here in Vrindavan, we get to experience this mood of, whatever happiness and distress, it's all by Krishna's arrangement. Somehow or other, it's all right around His mercy, and we just have to continue on with our services, like that. In opposite to that, many years before, one time I had to travel from India to Germany, and I can't exactly remember the detail of the journey, but I remember I was on the platform waiting for a train to go to, I think it was to Delhi, from Mathura to Delhi. I can't remember exactly, but anyhow, everybody had warned me, be prepared, the trains run late. Well, how late? Oh, maybe sometimes 6 hours, sometimes 8 hours. And I'm thinking, oh my God, that's a long time, But luckily that day, the train was only running late 4 hours. And we were all so in bliss. Only 4 hours. The train is already come. We're lucky, like that. People are just sitting on the platform and chatting and doing their thing and like that, Then, in contrast, when I arrived in Germany, I landed in Frankfurt, and also I had to go there to the train station. And of course, it's like walking into a sci-fi movie, Like the train looks like a rocket lying down, the doors open, very quiet and smooth. The floor is carpeted, everything is clean. It's like such a contrast to what we experience here in India. Anyhow, I'm sitting there and I'm even thinking, am I in the right compartment? Maybe this is first class or something. I'm sitting in the wrong seat, but I was in the right seat, and people were coming. And suddenly I noticed a very restlessness in the people. People were kind of grumbling and being restless. And I'm thinking, oh, what's the problem? And I looked outside, and the big train clock, on the platform showed that the train was running 4 minutes late. And everybody was complaining how unreliable and bad this system is, that we are, how dare there be 4 minutes late. So anyway, I just thought to share, the contrast. If you're in God consciousness, you come to this understanding, just to be patient, that everything is under the direction of the Lord, the happiness and the distress, and like that. how does he speak? Arjuna asked, how does the transcendentalist speak? Which means, how are his intelligence and words affected by another's affection, anger, or neutrality? How does he respond? This is very interesting because so we're all human beings, we are social animals, we need to engage with each other. However, how does a transcendentalist engage? And how does he respond to certain situations? Because we can understand to every cause, to everything that happens to us, we will react. You know, if we're very much affected by the modes of passion and ignorance, then we will react, you know, in an aggressive way, or in an upset way, or an overly emotional way, whatever comes to us. However, if somebody's situated in Krishna consciousness, more in the mode of goodness, he can understand whatever comes to me, whatever cause comes my way, there is a gap between the cause and my reaction to it. And that gap is called choice. So somebody who is becoming more situated in transcendence, he knows to choose to react in certain situations in a Krishna conscious way. He's more introspective, he's more thoughtful, he is more contemplative, he's more controlled. He has his senses and his mind under control. In text 56, this transcendentalist is called also Astita Dhya Muni. Prabhupada says in the Purport, such a fully Krishna conscious person is not at all disturbed by the onslaughts of the threefold miseries, for he accepts all miseries as the mercy of the Lord, thinking himself only worthy of more trouble due to his past misdeeds, and he sees that his miseries, by the grace of the Lord, are minimized to the lowest. So this is a very unique way to be able to feel. It takes practice, and it takes huge humility. Because the usual reaction when something bad happens to us, why me? That's so unfair. That's just not right. They misbehaved. They misjudged. But here somebody in Krishna consciousness, he understands how these troubles are given to me by the grace of the Lord, but in a minimized way. And why? To make us strong, to make us humble, to make us aware of God, to make us aware of Krishna as the ultimate cause. Similarly, when he's happy, he gives credit to the Lord, thinking himself unworthy of the happiness. He thinking himself unworthy of the happiness. In the material world, with our mind and senses, the whole goal is to enjoy, is to find happiness through sensual enjoyment. But here, a devotee, he feels himself unworthy even of happiness, because I don't deserve it, because I'm so fallen, I've so misbehaved, I have been rejecting the Lord, I've been sinful, I've done so many obnoxious activities. So he realizes that it is due to only to the Lord's grace that he's in such a comfortable condition and able to render better service to the Lord. So this is the attitude of the devotee, to feel grateful and appreciative for everything that Krishna is giving. It takes practice. It's not easy. It's not easy at all, because our conditioning has been completely the opposite. Our conditioning has been to enjoy the body in the maximum way. Then Arjuna asked, how does he sit? Which means, how does he not engage his senses? What is his mentality when his senses are restrained from their objects? And Krishna answers, he uses his senses only when required, because he's getting a higher taste. This is very important, that in Krishna consciousness we need to have the higher taste. We have to relish Krishna consciousness. We have to appreciate and be grateful for Krishna and his services and the association of devotees. Otherwise, as Prabhupada explained in this purport, if we are not engaged in Krishna consciousness, our senses will look again for material engagements. Now in text 61, the sloka just before today's, Krishna actually refers to himself for the first time. He's directly saying, and fixes his consciousness upon me. So he's talking about himself because, like I said before, even the impersonalists or the Mayavadis or the yogis, they understand about sense and mind control. But Krishna points out here, you have to it's not just a question of controlling your mind and senses. It's only actually possible if you fix your mind on me. And if our senses are fully engaged in Krishna's service, then our consciousness is called pratishtita, or fixed. But what happens when, in trying to reach this stage, one somehow or other fixes his senses again on some object of enjoyment? And especially if he views it as something separate from Krishna, so we're liable to have that happen, that in trying to control our mind or senses, maybe we fall short. Like the example is given oftentimes of a baby that's trying to learn how to walk. As it stands up and tries to walk, he'll fall down. He'll slip, but the child just doesn't worry, he just gets up and continues and tries again. So sometimes on the path of Krishna consciousness, that can also happen, that we somehow or other get distracted by some kind of object of enjoyment. And what is the result? And this is what today's verse is pointing out, that we need to be very careful. We need to be very diligent and be very serious about it. Understand not to contemplate the object of the senses, because externally you might be engaging in Krishna conscious activities, but if your mind is still contemplating to enjoy in some way, then that external behavior won't hold. Eventually you will give in to gratifying your senses. So it's very important to be very diligent about that, because you will develop attachment. And it can become dangerous. I wanted to so how to fix the mind on Krishna? Actually, it's only possible if we develop affection for Krishna, love for Krishna, because our attachment to material objects is because our heart, our affection has been placed there. So somehow or other that same emotion, that same feeling that we're giving to objects that we think will give us enjoyment, we need to give that same emotion to Krishna. And he can pacify our heart in such a way, like we were just reading in that verse from Nectar of Instruction. He will reciprocate our affection, and our material desires will go down. Our material attachments will actually dissolve. Our mind won't be so disturbed, like a frantic, out of control animal trying to enjoy in so many ways. The mind will be pacified. The heart will be peaceful, because we've learned that propensity of loving affection, to place it at the lotus feet of Krishna. In text 59, Krishna speaks about that. He says, though the embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, the taste for sense object remains. See, externally you might refrain, but you still have a taste for it because we're conditioned since time immemorial. We've been here through 8,400,000 species of life. So a taste remains. But ceasing such engagement by experiencing a higher taste, he is fixed in consciousness. So we definitely cease sense gratification, and we need to seek out the higher taste of Krishna consciousness, which Srila Prabhupada explains the best way is through Sankirtan, Harinam Sankirtan, chanting the holy name of the Lord. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So as soon as the mind is absorbed in chanting the holy name of the Lord, which is non-different from the Lord, just at that moment, you couldn't be possibly thinking about material sense enjoyment. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. And the mind actually always, the brain, needs positive instructions. You know, like if I tell you not to do something, like if I tell you right now, don't think of a pink elephant, the first thing you'll do is you think of a pink elephant, isn't it? You see? So we need positive, the mind needs positive engagement. Just like a naughty, restless child, every mother knows, I mean, we do it. We say, don't do that. Now sit down. Be quiet. Right? But actually, every mother knows, no, that's not going to work ultimately. I need to give a positive engagement, an alternative instead, whereby then the child becomes completely distracted and he'll forget about the nonsense. In Srimad Bhagavatam, in the 9th canto, 4th chapter, 65 verse, Krishna says, since pure devotees give up their homes, wives, children, relatives, riches, and even their lives simply to serve me, without any desire for material improvement in this life or the next, how can I give up such devotees at any time? Krishna reciprocates. It's a two-way system. It's not just that we are in a position where we have to control our mind, our senses, but just making that endeavor. And Krishna reciprocates. And here giving up doesn't necessarily mean that we have to just drop everything and literally give everything up. Giving up means to give up the idea of enjoying a particular situation or persons, especially in family life, in home life. We need to give up the idea that this situation is for my enjoyment. That's what we need to give up. In the Purport, Prabhupada explains, another point in this verse is that attachment to home, wife, children, friendship, society and love is not the way to achieve the favor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Of course, we have to balance it. We have to correctly understand it. In material life, we have a duty. This is the duty of Varnashram Dharma. However, just being dutiful and nicely taking care of wife and children, here Prabhupada says, that in of itself is not enough to gain the favor of the Supreme Lord. He says, for the endeavoring devotee, Krishna actually takes away these false attachments. Now, if we're taking care of wife, children, family, and society and everything for our own self-aggrandizement, which will definitely result in becoming very attached because our senses wanted to enjoy in a particular way. And this is the situation we've created for our enjoyment. then definitely a deep attachment will come. And Krishna doesn't want that. Not because he wants to give us a hard time, or he doesn't want us to be happy, but he understands that this material attachment will only entangle you and take you away from him and give you another birth in this material world where you have to do it all over again, become attached to so many other things. These attachments to material things go very deep in the heart and very, very difficult to uproot, very painful actually. Like in my life, I'm a very family-centered person. To me, my husband and my children were my life. I didn't know anything else. It was my security, it was my shelter, it was everything to me. And then somehow or other Krishna orchestrated the situation where just like that it was taken away. It was extremely painful. My heart was bleeding. And it was a very astonishing experience because I tried my best to be a Krishna conscious wife, to be a Krishna conscious mother, and do everything for Krishna's pleasure. And I was definitely in favor of my husband to take vanaprastha ashram, to become renounced, to strive more and more towards Krishna prema. Of course, if you really love your partner, then that's the highest you want for the partner and also for your children. You want everyone to become Krishna conscious and go home back to Godhead. However, it was astonishing to me when it actually came to the time how deep that attachment to husband and children goes in the heart. And then when Krishna took it away, it was very difficult, it was very painful. However, of course I feel fortunate because, like we just learned from that verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishna will arrange situations to save us from these material attachments because he does love us in return a lot more than what we can even know to love him. And he wants to help us to come closer to his lotus feet because ultimately we all have an eternal loving relationship with Krishna. And in the spiritual world we don't have any of these material concepts. It doesn't exist there. In the spiritual world, everybody only knows Krishna, and everybody only knows their particular relationship with Krishna, and everybody only loves Krishna, and everybody's happy and joyful in Krishna consciousness. And Krishna wants that for us the same. So there's this transition that we need to go through from having been captured in the material world since time immemorial and wanting to go home back to our real constitutional position, to have a loving relationship with Krishna. One time my revered spiritual master Sri Srimad Gaur Govinda Swami gave a lecture in Bhubaneswar, Srimad Bhagavatam class, on the story of Pingala, the prostitute. It's a very powerful story, how you have a prostitute, meaning this is a lady who is accustomed to have intimate relations with many men for the purpose of her maintenance, of earning money. So we know men seek the favor of ladies in the material world, and ladies know that they have a facility, their body facilitates the highest enjoyment for men, which is sexual enjoyment. So somehow or other she was in a situation where she was engaged in this particular way. And she'd also developed affection for a particular lover, and she had decked herself out, ornamented cosmetics, clothing, everything nice, and she's standing at her door looking for all the different men that are coming by. Oh, maybe he will come to me. Oh, but that man just walked by, he didn't notice. Or maybe this one will come. Oh, maybe that one, or maybe that nice one, he looks like he has a lot of money. Like that. Her mind was engaged the whole night. Oh, when will he come? Will it be this one? Will it be that one? to fulfill my desires. You see? So her consciousness was completely absorbed in that. And in a way, I identified with her. Because in the material world, especially before we come to Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada also explains like that, unless a girl is married at a young age, or at least engaged to a man where she knows, oh, this man will be my husband. What will happen to a woman's mind? She will look, especially in the West, we have this experience that the marriages are not arranged. So the girls are out on a hunt by themselves. Will it be this one? Maybe that one? I should have this one. No, he looks like a lot nicer, or he makes more money, and like that. The mind contemplates in that way. So Pingala was waiting, but nobody came. It didn't happen. And it came to midnight. And finally she became completely frustrated with the whole thing. We discussed that last time about akinchana, becoming materially exhausted. She actually got so fed up that she went inside, she threw her ornaments, she washed her cosmetics off, she gave all her items in charity to the brahmanas, and she became a devotee. And I was astonished when I heard that story. It deeply affected me on an emotional level. And I went to my Gurudev after the class and I was shaking. I was shaking and tears were coming in my eyes. And I said, Gurudev, how was it possible for the prostitute Pingala to suddenly, like that, give it up? This desire for sex, for enjoyment, looking for men, fulfilling material desires. How did it happen? It just was completely inconceivable to me. Because as we're saying, since time immemorial, we've been attached to the objects of the senses, not just in this life, not just struggling with it now as devotees, but since lifetimes. We've only looked for the objects of the senses. We had strong attachment. I was just reading today in Jaivadhamma, Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains about the sarira linga and the stula linga, meaning there's the subtle and the gross body. The gross body will deteriorate at the time of death when the soul leaves, but the soul travels to the next birth in the subtle body, and the subtle body is that made of mind, intelligence and false ego. And the mind, intelligence and false ego, our mind carries our material desires, our material attachments to the next body. That's why Krishna is so adamant. Don't contemplate the object of the senses. Don't become attached. Don't develop lust for it, because it will stick in your subtle body, in your mind. Even if you're not acting on it now, you will be forced, you will be propelled into a future, if not in this life, in the next life, to fulfill those desires. So like that, I was shaking before Gurudev. How was it possible for Pingala to just suddenly like that give it all up? And Gurudev looked at me very gravely and he said, you have to understand, Anuradha, you have to understand one thing. That day, one sadhu had come to visit her. Sadhus, they roam, they beg, they do madhukari, not because they're in need, but they come to give mercy. They come to the house to give mercy. So somehow or other, by some great good fortune, some sadhu had come to her house and obviously given her some spiritual instruction. At least he must have given his merciful glance. He must have showed some mercy, some compassion on this lady. And because of the mercy of the sadhu, suddenly that night, that determination in her heart, like Krishna is promising, completely overrode, became so strong that just like that, she was able to give up material attachment. She didn't contemplate on the objects of the senses anymore. She gave up her lusty desires. You see? So that's a very, very powerful transformation, considering how long it's been going on in our existence. So the association of such a sadhu is essential, because only somebody who is completely free from Maya. See, and this is what Prabhupada points out in the Purport. He says, even Shivaji, such a powerful personality, is explained he's nearly Bhagavan because he's nearly as good as God. He holds such a powerful position. But just see, when Parvati was dancing and her ankle belts were tingling, tingling. He became allured. Because he wanted to enjoy with her. That desire was still there, that material desire was there. And of course, that's as a result Kartikeya was born. Whereas in contrast, Prabhupada says Haridāsa Ṭhākura. Now he was just a young man, a beautiful young man. And Māyā-devī herself came before him for 3 nights in a row, trying to allure him. You know how women have their gestures, their eyebrows, their glands, their movements. It's very enchanting. It's very enamoring. Men are like butter and women are like fire. When the two come in close proximity, what happens? The butter melts. That's the energy. That's the reality. So here's Māyā-devī herself trying to allure Haridāsa Ṭhākura, but he didn't become weak. He maintained his sadhana. He maintained his strength to chant. So how is that possible? He had the association of Lord Nityananda himself. He had this direct association of Lord Chaitanya. So again, the mercy of sadhu is essential. The blessing of sadhu is essential, because Prabhupada explains, I was just reading it, I was listening to a lecture. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he comes to give the fruit of love of God indiscriminately to everyone. He doesn't discriminate. There's no other incarnation of Krishna that came to give Krishna prema, especially not on the level like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he doesn't even distinguish, he doesn't discriminate. He's willing to give it to everyone. However, if you don't have any desire, then there's not even anything he can do. We have to desire it. We have to want it. So this help is always available. Because we can't do it on our own strength. So we need the help. We need the help of sadhu. We need the help of the Lord. In the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 2nd chapter, text 31, in the Purport, Srila Prabhupada says, the merciful Acharyas and the merciful Supreme Personality of Godhead together help the serious devotee who wants to return home back to Godhead. So there's 2 qualifications. We need to be serious and we need to want to go home back to Godhead. Then the Lord himself and all the Acharyas, a whole Guru Parampara, like when we are saying this verse, becoming the servant of the servant of the servant, dasa dasa anudas, means the servant of our Guru Parampara. You see? So we need to become serious and we need to want to go home back to Godhead. The Lord will definitely help. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the 3rd canto, 9th chapter, text 29, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O Brahmā, O depth of Vedic wisdom, be neither depressed nor anxious about the execution of creation. What you are begging from me has already been granted before. Lord Brahmā is sitting alone, on the lotus. He's been given the instruction by the Lord to create the material world, all the planetary system, a huge task, right? And he sees the fierce waves of the causal ocean. He's terrified. But Krishna assures him, it's all right. I've given you this instruction to create. You're doing it under my order. And your success is already being granted. Because I want it. Just the same how Krishna wanted Arjuna to fight the battle of Kurukshetra. He said, victory is already guaranteed because I want it. Of course, Prabhupada warns, that doesn't mean we get puffed up, that I've achieved something or that Krishna selected me or anything like that. We need to always be in a humble mercy frame of mind and understand that everything is the mercy of the Lord. And whatever credit comes, whatever good we have achieved in our life, actually we have to give the credit to Krishna. That's what Arjuna did. He always saw himself subordinate to Krishna. He always saw himself as his servant. Whatever good happened is by the mercy of the Lord. So many other things. Of course, we understand that Bali Maharaj also, he was put through severe test. Prabhupada says, actually it's an unbearable test that he had to endure. But because, I just read it, in the Purport, Prabhupada says, Bali Maharaj passed severe test by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He understood it was the Lord's mercy. Sometimes tests are unbearable. And Prabhupada said he tested him but also gave him the strength to tolerate such adversity. The Lord is so kind to his devotee that when severely testing him, he gives the necessary strength to be tolerant and to continue to remain a glorious devotee. So I just noticed my time has run out. I wanted to say some other things, but I think I better stop here now. And if anybody has any questions or comments, yes, please, Prabhu.
You mentioned Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and wanting to discover love of God. And you mentioned that if one doesn't desire for it, then even he can't do anything.
Yes.
However, from his trip to South India, we see that he was, whenever he come across a junction and hug somebody whom he never met, and there's no mention that they wanted Krishna prema.
Yes, yes.
They would be in ecstasy and they're in
Yes,
reaction.
yes, yes.
So isn't it fair to conclude that he gives it even to those whom...
Well, you see, what happens is by his association, that desire developed. The Nityasiddha devotees that come here, either on the order of the Supreme Lord or voluntarily, because their heart bleeds to see the suffering of the conditioned souls, they come here to give their association, to remind the jivas, hey jiva, wake up, jiv jago, wake up, sleeping soul. How long will you sleep in the lap of the witch called Maya? Isn't it? So that's why the Lord comes. That's why the pure devotees come. Because the jivas are so forgetful and enthralled by the material world because they don't know anything. They're forgotten. So the devotees come and travel the world. That's why Srila Prabhupada traveled 12 times or 14 times around the planet. And by his association, people would be startled. Oh, who is he? He looked so different. He spoke so different. He gave a completely different message. And it gives this jolt. Oh, I'm not this body. I'm not part of this material world. I'm a spiritual being. And then Srila Prabhupada created by his association the desire in people. Oh, let me help him. Let me serve him. When he was standing under that tree in Tompkins Square Park, he was chanting the pure holy name. And because of the potency of his pure holy name, that attracted jivas, because inherently the jiva is part of Krishna's Swarup Shakti. a spiritual being, you see, and they're just in forgetfulness, and the layer of forgetfulness is so thick, and that's why devotees go out and preach, and they create that desire. Because you can lead a horse to water, but you can't force him to drink. So the preachers, they have a great responsibility. They need to be pure in their intention, so that their actions and words have potency, so that they will create a desire within others. Oh yes, oh, I can see he's doing a good thing, I want that too. Because in Upadeshamrita, in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Rupa Goswami speaks a lot about this lobha and lolyam, that we have icha, we have to have that desire. Because the original misguided desire of material enjoyment is what brought us here in the material world. So that desire needs to be purified and redirected towards the lotus feet of the Lord. Yeah, Prabhu?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, controlling the desires and controlling ourselves is very important. Sometimes we cannot tolerate whatever happens to us. But by Krishna's mercy, Krishna is giving us tolerance, we tolerate. But sometimes we cannot tolerate. Why it is like that? Sometimes we tolerate, sometimes we don't tolerate. Just today morning somebody was asking Guru Maharaj one question. That Maharaj, I want to sing, but I am not getting opportunity to sing. So Guru Maharaj, you have to tolerate opportunity. There are so many devotees they want to sing. So you have tolerate and automatically get opportunity to sing. So similarly, there are so many disturbances coming in our life. Just like my wife was sick and she was about to leave the body. So I was not disturbed. I knew that everybody has to go. And I was expecting that thing. And doctors were surprised that your wife is dying and you are just as a normal person. Because the problem is which mercy by our spiritual master, by Prabhupada, that he was tolerating that which, how can we tolerate those things? Right.
Yeah, it's a very important question. Thank you, Prabhu. It happens to all of us, and usually in an unexpected way. Oftentimes we think, oh yes, I'm controlled, I know what I'm doing, I've got my life in order, and then just something sideways or from behind in a very unexpected way comes at us and completely catches us by surprise, and and then what we're really feeling will come to the surface. Maybe our intolerance, our anger, our frustration, like that. So how to deal with that? First of all, again, we understand, like I was completely convinced in my life, I'm not an angry person. Here Krishna speaking, this anger comes. No, I'm a devotee, I've been practicing for so many years, I chant Hare Krishna, I'm not an angry person. But then Krishna orchestrates a situation that you really didn't expect, or you didn't plan. It was definitely not on your agenda. And suddenly what's actually hidden in the corners of your heart comes out. And I remember I went through a stage, I was so angry. I was like a fury. You see, and it took me by surprise, and I had to deal with this anger issue. And then, so how to deal with it? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu over and over and over teaches us Trinadapi Sunichina, that when we're taking up our beads, when we're chanting, to always think ourselves lower than the straw in the street. So this is a cultivation of consciousness that we're reminded every day, every day, every day. Then when an unforeseen situation or incident comes our way, we are habituated by that constant practice. Okay, this is happening, I'm totally confused, I have no idea what's going on. I don't understand it. I feel I might get upset, right? So, but let me just pause, like I said, before, between a cause and a reaction to it, there's a gap, there's a choice. So this is our choice now. Let me pause, let me just take a breath, let me be humble before I make a decision of how to react. And let me pray to Krishna. And then in time, what we learn is to, whatever happened, not to see it in a negative way. Oh, this is something that upset me, that disturbed me, that was unfair to me. But I learned to see it that, why did Krishna arrange this? Why did it come to me in this way? What is he trying to tell me? What is here for me to learn? In other words, you turn it around and you change it and you see it as an opportunity of growth. You see it as an opportunity of growth. Okay, this has happened. Now what would be the Krishna conscious way for me to deal with it? I might have to go away, catch my breath, sleep over it, chant some extra rounds, read some Bhagavatam, or get consultation from senior devotees to help me through it. But whatever happened, whatever has just happened, is an opportunity for growth. The only reason we might be reacting in a conditioned way is because that's what we are. We're conditioned. And we see everything self-centered in relationship to ourselves, instead of seeing every situation as the mercy of the Lord. So what is it that I'm here to learn? How can I utilize this better and grow and become stronger in Krishna's service? Does that make sense? Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for your time and your patience and giving me this opportunity to do some little service for Srila Prabhupada and Guru and Gauranga. Hare Krishna.